ES Audio.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio, supported by Fuller's London Pride, official beer of Premiership Rugby. Support with pride.
Hello there, I'm Lawrence Dallaglio. Welcome to the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast, supported by Fuller's London Pride. It's been an enormous weekend of rugby, and we've got lots to talk about. Luckily, here to help guide us through it all is our excellent co-host, Sarra Elgan. Hi, Sarra.
Hi, Lol. You okay?
Very well, thank you. Very well. And from the Evening Standard, we've got Steve Cording. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Lawrence. Hi, Sarra.
We've saved the best till last, haven't we, Sarra?
We have indeed. Our guest this week is a man who knows a thing or two, I guess you could say, about rugby, having spent 12 years as head coach for Wales and been in charge of the British and Irish Lions tour, 3 British and Irish Lions tours, actually, not to mention his time coaching a certain Lawrence Dallaglio and the Wasps team during some of their most successful years. It's Warren Gatland. Hi, Warren. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. You're in Wales at the moment, so you must be well, right?
A little bit wet here, yeah, but I'm here for the month doing some games for Prime Video and stuff, yeah, so I'm fantastic to be back.
Yeah, but you're not only here to enjoy the autumn internationals, which we will be chatting about, of course, but you're also here on a tour of your own. So tell us a little bit about that. You were in Swansea last night. How did that go?
Yeah, it was great. We had a 300 odd there at the Grand Theatre, and then Aberystwyth on Tuesday night, Llandudno on the 14th, and then Cardiff on the 16th.
And I'm very impressed. 12 years in Wales has clearly taught you how to pronounce Welsh towns, cities. I'm very, very impressed with that.
Oh, it's such a tough language to learn and pronounce. You've got to get your L's right and your C's and everything. So, yeah.
Well, that was very impressive. Lawrence, you've been taking the stage since last week's podcast, have you?
I have indeed. Very much a supporting cast for me. It's Martin Bayfield, who has had a similar sort of theatre tour. He's got a very good book that's come out, and he's obviously one of the best after-dinner speakers, raconteurs. So he took to the stage in Richmond Theatre. When I said to everyone I'm going to Richmond Theatre, they were thinking Christmas, panto, maybe. So yeah, good fun. Talking about the days when England used to win, I suppose.
That's harsh. Steve, what have you been up to since last week?
Fireworks night, obviously, on Saturday. So, yeah, me and the kids went to a fireworks party. And then last night managed to catch up with a bit of the jungle, which Mike Tyndall's appearance. You must have been asked a few times to go on I'm a Celebrity Long, were you?
I was actually, yeah.
That would have been a disaster.
Well, come on, Sarah. I mean, if you can survive 22 years in the dressing room, I'm pretty sure the jungle would be okay, wouldn't it? I mean, I think, do you know, the biggest problem I think we'd all have is just starvation. I think you can't really dress it up. If there's 12 of you and someone comes back with only 2 meals, you know, you're really pissed off, aren't you, really? So good luck to Mike. Do you know what? I think he'll do brilliantly. He's calm and he's just a top man. So we wish him all the very best.
Okay, let's get down to business then. Put some questions to our guests.
Don't forget, you can also watch the full extended video podcast at londonpridebeer.co.uk. Please drink responsibly.
Well, Warren, I've been thinking about this for a very long time because you and I have known each other forever. When you first joined Wasps, I think in 2002, we had an amazing 3 or 4 years. But obviously, you know, you had Galwegians before then, Ireland, Wasps, Wales, British Lions. You've had a couple of stints in New Zealand. I mean, it's quite unusual. It's had an enormous impact on your life, your coaching career and your families, but also everywhere you go, you've had an enormous impact on their lives as well. I mean, if you were to sort of start at the very beginning, where would you say the real highlights, you know, was it Galwegians and then Ireland, wasn't it, after that? So quite early on, you were coaching the national side already.
Yeah, and coaching Connacht as well. Galwegians happened by mistake. It was the end of an All Black tour, and they were looking for a player coach. I think I was 25, and I was teaching back in New Zealand, and I thought, yeah, I'm up for this challenge, and so I resigned my job back in New Zealand and stayed on there for about 5 or 6 months, sort of as a player coach, and you know, we won the Connacht League, and I ended up doing that for 4 years. It was kind of during the amateur days, so I'd go back to New Zealand in between, pick up a relief teaching job for a couple of terms, and then if I was lucky enough, get selected for the end of year tour for the All Blacks, and then head back to Galway. And those are the amateur days, so I used to get a brown paper bag every month to cover my costs and expenses, and then have to go back to New Zealand and have a proper job. So, hello, it was a great experience. You know, I learned a lot, particularly as still as a young player, but as a coach. And I kind of went there. I remember going to my first training session, and the manager said to me, "Oh, what we need for training?" And I said, "Well, how many are you expecting?" He said, "Oh, about 30." And I said, "Oh, probably one ball between 2 players, so 15 balls and some cones." And there was absolute panic on his face because he told me afterwards he had 2 balls in the boot of his car and one was flat. So he was going around every sports shop in Galway trying to get balls and that. And, like I said, they were expecting about 30 players. He failed to tell me that on the Tuesday night, only 6 players had turned up. So in those days, in the amateur days, the coach used to arrive and say to the lads, 15 laps of the pitch while he thought about what he was going to do for training. And I kind of changed things and, we just did lots of skill games and had some fun. Training sessions weren't too long. And it was a great experience for me. And then lucky enough when the game went professional, I was asked to come and coach Connacht over there. And then, I'm coaching Ireland at 34. Ireland lost the opening game of the Six Nations to Scotland, and Brian Ashton was a coach and he resigned afterwards. And I get a phone call on the Sunday from Pat Whelan saying, would you like to coach Ireland for the remainder of the Six Nations? So at 34, only just finished playing years earlier. And, was I really? No, I wasn't probably, but someone gives you an opportunity like that, you don't turn it down.
I mean, obviously, you played for many, many years, and I guess you took a lot of that experience of playing in New Zealand into your coaching. And obviously, you said as a teacher as well, it's quite daunting to start coaching players. Some players that are maybe even older than you at the start of your coaching career. But you seem to take to it very, very comfortably indeed.
Yeah, a lot of them were older than me when I went to Galwegians. We had guys in their 30s and stuff. I remember I promised myself as a coach I would never do what I hated to do as a player. I hated long training sessions. And as a teacher, I taught sort of 12 and 13-year-olds. So I kind of treated the players with about the same intellect as a 12 or 13-year-old because, in a classroom, kids can concentrate for about 20 minutes. And so meetings didn't used to be long, 20 minutes meeting before players started sort of rolling their eyes and looking around the room and things like that. So, yeah, it was good times, good experience, made some great friends. And it was the start of a journey, really.
Your timing of when to move on to the next team or the next part of your journey has been, it's been decided by you more than probably any other coach. You're very much in charge of your own destiny. And in terms of your coaching style, 2 questions really. How has that developed over the years as you've got to work with different people, different players, different countries, maybe different attitudes? And how have you defined your success as a coach? Is it by trophies? Is it by development? It's been an incredible journey, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, most of it's been my own choice. I mean, my contract was up in Ireland after 4 years, and that last year we'd won 6 out of 8 games. We'd finished equal on points with England in the championship, but lost on points difference. And had a meeting with Philip Brown, the CEO, and one of the other committee guys, and it was kind of a pretty quick conversation. It was just, Warren, we really want to thank you for what you've done for Irish rugby, but we're not going to recontract you. So I was, pretty disappointed, but I'm a great believer in one door closes and another opens. I've never planned ahead. Things have always come along, and then Wasps came knocking at the door, and I thought that's a great opportunity, one, to go and live and spend some time in London, and then looking at Wasps in the bottom of the Premiership, and you're in the team, and I'm thinking, how the hell is that team bottom of the Premiership with the quality of players that they had? So, yeah, and one of the things that has always been a big thing for me is, and every squad that I've gone into now, and every time we came together as a squad, the first thing I'll say to them is, guys, we're very lucky to do what we do. We play professional sport, but the most important thing is not the rugby. The most important thing is your family. And that was a great lesson for me from my time in Galwegians, because in January 1992, we had our first daughter with Shauna. She was born there, and unfortunately, she was born with spina bifida, and she lived for about 4 months. And at that time, Galwegians were going through a process of getting promoted into the All-Ireland League, and it had taken us a couple of years. And we were just coming to the playoffs, and they came to me and said, Warren, you've got to go home and get your family settled back home. And I said, yeah, but what about the playoffs? We've got these big games coming up. And they said, no, your family's more important, to get back home. And that really, really resonated with me. And so we went back home, and after a couple of weeks, things had settled down and things were okay. And I rang the club back up and said, look, do you want me to come back and play in the playoffs? And they said, would you do that? And I said, yeah. And, because of what they had done for me. And we went back and we won the couple of games, and I was able to then get back to New Zealand. So that's kind of been definitely one of those philosophies for me, in terms of the player comes to me and his partner's pregnant and they need a scan and they've got to miss training or anything like that. I always feel by giving something to players, looking after them, making sure things are right at home, that they're happy, then you definitely get more back from them. From a coaching perspective, you get a better product, you get players who are motivated and players that want to perform for you.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because more and more, I think, when we hear kind of coaches talk about how it's almost more important how you kind of talk and manage players as a coach. It's as important as the skill sets and the plays that you coach them on the field of play, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's, how do you create sort of that harmony within a group? And, always, people aren't always going to be happy with selection and stuff, but if you've got a group of guys that are working hard for each other and wanting to take the field at training and wanting to go out and perform on the weekend. And I think that time at Wasps was a great learning experience for me. It was a great group of players. It was a fantastic club because it had kind of an ethos like a blue collar club. They welcomed anyone in. They worked hard. There was no egos. I learned a lot from that experience. We were kind of a club of strays and waifs, so we just took anyone in, and players performed, and we succeeded, and we intended to get the best out of players. And we had some players who were outstanding, great individuals. Obviously with Lawrence, and I've said on a number of occasions, he's the best captain that I've ever seen in the game. Is unbelievable in the shed and motivating players, getting out the best. He was honest. He put his hand up when he played crap. He was the first to recognise that and take responsibility for that. So I loved my time in London, loved my time at Wasps, and it's a shame what's happening to them at the moment, but hopefully they can sort those off-field things out.
Warren, can I ask you a question that I think is pertinent maybe for the time of year and where we are at the moment, given that the World Cup is ahead? So I think it's a problem that maybe a few nations are having, that of kind of bleeding youngsters in and still kind of keeping hold of their experience, older players in their squad. So how difficult did you find doing that? And how should, I know Australia are trying now, aren't they? They're tinkering with their team quite a lot. And that's a difficult balance, isn't it, to have, really?
I think at the moment, the autumn series is that opportunity to try a few different combinations, try some of the younger players, try a different sort of game plan if that's what you want to do. Because what you are trying to do is you're trying to build for the Six Nations, for the Northern Hemisphere teams, because that's when points are at stake. And that's when it really matters. And then you build into your warm-up games and then into the World Cup. So you've got a little bit of flexibility. I think for some of the smaller nations, and Wales are in a little bit of they've got a few aging players at the moment that are they going to be around in 12 months' time? Is their form going to be all right in 12 months' time? I think you probably look at Ireland. They've been a better team 2 years out going into a World Cup, have hit form, and by the time they've got to World Cups, they've picked up injuries, or some of their older players may have been, just gone past it a little bit and probably haven't got that quite right. I mean, they look incredibly strong at the moment, but their big Achilles heel is Johnny Sexton. If he breaks down, who's going to replace him? And he's a massive key for them over the next 12 months and them making sure that he stays fit. And if I was a new coach going into a team without the sort of resources or depth of players, I'd kind of look and go, well, which of these players aren't going to be here in the next 4 years? And you might look at changing your squad, giving yourself and buying yourself a little bit of time from the public and the media as you're developing a new squad, and knowing that you've still got those older players there that if you did pick up some injuries, they can come back and give you some of that experience. So it's just trying to find that balance between how do you end up in a World Cup cycle where you've got players who are fit, players who have had enough games and enough experience to perform, players that are on the fringes have also had time in the middle and have got some international experience. And it's a real balancing act, and I'm not sure all the teams have got that right at the moment. And the next 12 months, or the next few months, are going to be pretty important if they're giving some players that opportunity, particularly if they pick up injuries. And you often find that World Cups are so intensive, and this autumn campaign's tough as well, that you do pick up injuries.
We'll talk about the results of some of those internationals in a little while, but in terms of your own decision making, I mean, you've coached at every level all over the world. What's next in terms of coaching? I mean, where do you go? Do you go to a club? Do you go to a country?
I've kind of got the itch again now to sort of do so. My contract's with the New Zealand Rugby Union, so I'm contracted to them with the Chiefs, and that finishes around about World Cup time. I've never had an agent, from a rugby perspective. I've always been a great believer in what will be, and I've done my own contracts and kind of thought, this is what I think I'm worth and what my value is. I haven't planned ahead and haven't there, but look, to be honest, I've had a few approaches, and a couple from Japan and people talking, and a couple of other teams as well. Something will come along, so I'm not actively looking. I haven't got someone out there looking for me and stuff. I'm just, like I said to you, I'm not worried about that. And I know the right thing will come along and float my boat, and I'll be, excited about it.
Is there any team or any nation that you haven't coached that you would like to?
Probably France at the moment.
We could talk, couldn't we, for the next half an hour, I think, with you, Warren. But we've got to move on, and we're going to take a look at the mammoth amount of rugby for the weekend.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio, supported by Fuller's London Pride, official beer of Premiership Rugby.
We'll start with the good news. Red Roses securing their place in the World Cup final against New Zealand. Then we saw wins for Italy over Samoa, Scotland against Fiji, Ireland, who beat the current world champion South Africa, of course. Then there was that thrilling win for France, who beat Australia, thanks to a last-minute try from Damien Penaud on Saturday night. I was there. What an atmosphere. I could genuinely go and watch French rugby every weekend. I feel like I'm in a nightclub. It's amazing. I haven't been to a nightclub for quite a while. Okay. But it's not been a happy weekend for everyone in the Northern Hemisphere, has it? Despite the best efforts, Wales couldn't quite hold out against the All Blacks. Warren, you were at the Principality Stadium for that game. I mean, New Zealand looked pretty efficient.
Yeah, and despite their ups and downs, and they've had it pretty tough. And Ian Foster, I've never seen, I know myself, you get some criticism at times, but I'd never seen anything like it back in New Zealand with the pressure he was under and social media and things, and they've changed coaches and lost a home series to Ireland and lost at home to Argentina for the first time ever, and then lost away in South Africa. So I think they had about something like a 50% win record, but they've actually won their last 5 games, and people kind of probably overlook that. And I think one of the greatest strengths of New Zealand and New Zealand rugby is how quickly they can adapt and change. And I think they've been able to do that. I thought they were very strong. They were really direct in the way that they played against Wales. Scrum was strong, dominated at scrum time. And their pick and go game and just able to get across the gay line was pretty impressive. I thought Adi Savir was just on another planet, really. He was outstanding, caused Wales a huge amount of problems. But in fairness to Wales, they were down 17-0, and that was pretty early on in the game, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a blowout. But they could have taken the 3 points, of kick for the corner. Dyer scored a lovely try in 17-10, and they've kicked a penalty, and they've got themselves back in the game. But every time they got back in the game, the All Blacks have gone down to Wales 22, and they were just absolutely clinical there. I think they came with 100% sort of success rate coming back with points out of getting into the Welsh 22. So, Wales will be disappointed with a number of things to work on and that. But there were times when there were glimpses of the All Blacks creaking. When they came under pressure and the score was getting close, you could see that air of confidence wasn't quite there within that All Blacks team. And, Wales weren't able to score and put them under that sort of pressure that they needed to be under. Because the All Blacks did give away a number of penalties when Wales were able to keep the ball, but in the end they were just too strong, and then to put 50-odd points on them was a reflection of the game, and Wales will be disappointed with lots of things to work on. So looking forward to the All Blacks Scotland next week, and then obviously the week after that big one against England should be pretty mouth-watering at Twickenham.
Yes, shall we move on to England then? Sunday saw them run out against Argentina, who had won at Twickenham since 2006, I think it was. But the final score saw the Pumas beat the host by just a single point. Lawrence, in a word, can you sum up that game on Sunday and your disappointment?
Yes, I think the word worrying really for English fans, because getting the campaign off to the best possible start is really important, particularly when you've got, Japan and then New Zealand and South Africa. And I mean, as Gats has pointed out, in New Zealand, they lost recently home series to Ireland, they lost to Argentina. It can happen. You can just have a really bad day at the office. But worrying from an England perspective, because in the Six Nations, we've lost more games than we've won in the last couple of years. And now you start the autumn campaign year out for the World Cup and you start with a loss. So I don't think you can hide it. I want England to win every game. I'm not, I work in the media. I'm passionate about English rugby and I want them to win. And sometimes that leads you to say things that are a little bit more brutal in your assessment. And people go, oh, that's, you're just being, quite harsh as a critic. But I'd be like that as a player, It's not acceptable. It's not good enough, really. And I want my players to come out and tell the public that, to say, guys, it was not good enough. It's not acceptable. And we'll put it right next week. Put some pressure on yourself to perform,
What's the problem with England at the moment?
Oh, look, I'm not too sure. I mean, the one thing about the message, what I always tried to do in Wales, and I found this to be really powerful, was, to control the narrative, to let people know what you're thinking, what my plan is for these campaigns coming up or the next campaign. And I can't see that with England. I kind of think that, there's the campaign and then there's a change and then we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm looking from the outside, not 100% sure what the plan is. By keeping people informed when I was in Wales about, for example, in 2018, we went to Argentina and we left all our senior players behind. We won a series out there, but that was the plan. And then we've gone into, this is what we're going to do in the autumn campaign and Six Nations, and first 2 games in 2019 in the Six Nations. We took 31 players away with us, told the media that's what we're going to do. We're going to replicate, potentially what was going to be in the World Cup. And we won the first game in Paris. And then I said, I'm going to make lots of changes to the game against Italy. I made 11 changes, got criticised, but we we were able to not play brilliantly, but win that game with all those sorts of changes. So kind of letting people know what you're doing and what your plan is, I think, can be a really powerful message. And I'm not sure that that's always been the case with England. They picked a really big team. They tried to overpower Argentina with the size of the side that they picked. And Argentina aren't that sort of team that you can do that, because they hang in there. They're not going to beat you by 30 or 40 points, but they'll stay in the fight and they'll fight for scraps and stay in the arm wrestle and do enough to win. And I'm not sure the direction they're going in at the moment and what they're actually trying to achieve.
Eddie Jones saying he's not going to pick the best players, he's going to pick the best team, just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. I mean, the fact that he sent Caden Murley back home, he's by far, the most informed winger that we've got at the moment in England. And we're watching week in, week out in the Premiership, some outstanding play and some outstanding rugby, and it's clinical and it's cutting through, and we're watching the offloads and we're just amazed by it all. And then we see England go back to trying to play, basically trying to blast Argentina off the pitch, and it wasn't great to watch. It didn't really seem to show a lot of dynamism on Eddie's part, because he just didn't seem to want to react to the way that those players can play.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio, supported by Fuller's London Pride, official beer of Premiership Rugby.
Yeah, so I'm interested from your perspective. The best teams are coach-led, but they've got to be player-driven. We're not in a situation where the captain picks the team, like sometimes happens in cricket, but more often than not, you agree with what the coach is doing, hopefully, because that's the coach's job to kind of impair their philosophy on the senior players. The senior players then drip feed that down throughout the team. But as a senior player, you've got to go to the coach and say, look, we need to be in agreement on what's happening here. Why are you picking him out of position? Or, explain that to me, and then I can then explain it as the captain to the rest of the nation. Owen Farrell is a superstar rugby player. I mean, he's one of the world's best. He's the third most point scorer of all time. And I'm just not sure that there's that connection amongst the group that you need to be successful. I mean, the game is tactical, it's technical, but it's very emotional. And it's very mental, and you and I know that, Gats. And when you've got a 4-match series, you've got to come out the blocks fast. I mean, winning is the only thing that matters in a 4-match series, the first game. Because if you win the first game, the momentum and the energy and the confidence just moves to the next one. If you lose the first game, and England have done that in lots of Six Nations titles, it becomes really difficult as an international coach to turn that around. And I think the players, and I'm not looking at Eddie Jones, the players have to accept responsibility, but they have to do that publicly. I used to put my hand up and say, that is not good enough. I didn't play well enough, and I will sort that this week, and you will see the real me next week. And a player like Itoje, for instance, I mean, didn't even see him in the game. He's one of the world's best players, and I'm sure when they have the debrief, they'll be discussing it. But connect with the public and let us know what you're feeling. It's so important.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like I need to put you two, Warren and Lawrence, into a room together and just leave you talk for the next 3 hours. Oh, should I do that, Lawrence?
Well, don't well.
I love it. I'm loving it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I said why Lawrence was trying to get such a great captain. Look how emotional he is. If this was their first day of training, he'd be coming in there, the eyebrows would be down, he'd be pointing fingers at everyone, and because going off. Then this is the kind of chat he'd be having. And
but life is miserable when you're losing. Life is miserable. Your wife is unhappy with you. Your kids are unhappy. You can't go out and buy a pint of milk because you're so embarrassed with the blood. The milkman's saying, what's that all about, mate? That's And it has such an impact on life. And in England, in that camp, they just think, us guys don't like it. It just has a huge impact. And I think,
international rugby, there's no in between. It's agony or ecstasy, isn't it? That's the whole thing. You win, it's brilliant. You lose, it's you're in the doldrums. The great thing about club rugby, you've got a chance to experiment a little bit and fail. So. Because it doesn't all matter on every single game, but international, you're under the microscope. Everyone's scrutinising everything, and you've got to go out there and perform and give it your best. And that's the reality of it. There's a huge amount at stake.
Yeah. Should we turn it to club rugby now then for a little bit? I feel like Lawrence wants.
Please do. Although it's still as depressing for me as anything else as well. So. Maybe I'll just mute myself.
You're having a bad day today, Lawrence.
A bad year at the moment, but it can change. It can change.
I feel like you need to go out, have a nice breakfast with your wife, have some avocado and toast, have a nice cup of coffee and chill out.
Well, I think what I need to do is put a tracksuit on and start coaching. That's what I need to do. because I'm itching all over at the moment. It's killing me.
Okay, let's move on, shall we, to Premiership action. Friday night saw Exeter pay a visit to Franklin's Gardens. It wasn't the most exciting of first halves, despite the Chiefs taking the lead midway through the second half, thanks to a couple of tries from Joe Sidmans. It was ultimately Northampton who came away with the win. Steve, Saints will finally feel, I think, that they're moving in the right direction. You kind of feel like that this was kind of a big win for them, really, just to not lose connection, with the top part of the league.
Yeah, into top four. I mean, albeit that they've played 2 games more than Gloucester, but I think the other 2 tries, obviously, from Tommy Freeman, who give Eddie Jones a little bit of a nudge on his return from injury. But yeah, the first half was pretty tough to watch. It was a game pretty much dominated by the boot. I mean, although Finn Smith, again, perfect with his 16 points, he's now hit 12 out of 12 kicks at goal since he moved over from Worcester. So there's a lot of positive signs there for what they've got going forward.
And then the first of Saturday's game, Sale Sharks returned to their winning ways. They beat Gloucester 27-17 at the AJ Bell. Only Gloucester's second defeat of the season, but George Stevenson did have 11 players away on international duty. So there were a few cherry and whites making their first Premiership starts. Warren, from a coaching perspective, how difficult is it in club rugby, I guess, when your star players are away? It's easy to say, isn't it? It's an opportunity to bleed youngsters in, but you still want to win.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a real challenge, isn't it? And so how do you, particularly early on in the season, and you've got to stay in contention, if you've got a team full of a lot of internationals, but then you've got to be giving some of those youngsters some time in the middle so that when you do need them, and you need them in these sort of weekends, that they can go and hopefully perform. And that's a challenge for them. And I always say that one of the things about coaching is that you can't coach experience. And you learn from being out there and playing. And so those guys, they'll benefit from that. Some of those youngsters who are getting those opportunities and building some combinations. And then you bring the big boys back, and, hopefully you can continue to build momentum. And you've had players in the squad who have, had some time. And that's, like I said, the thing about, club rugby, you have got that ability to drop a couple of games and work on a few things. And it hopefully doesn't wreck your whole season if you can continue to build on that and, finish strongly towards the end and make the playoffs and be strong in the playoffs.
Up at Kingston Park, it was more disappointment for Newcastle as visitors Bath notch up their first away win of the season. They leave the Falcons now at the bottom of the table alongside London Irish. Lawrence, Newcastle, they've had a couple of weeks without any games, and they just didn't really seem to get going, I guess, against Bath. What does your old mate Dave Alder need to do or need to focus on to try and change fortunes of his team?
I mean, it's a tough one. Dave is operating in a different budget from a lot of other teams, a different squad. And at that time, he's trying to create maybe a change of style. They've obviously got a strong set of forwards, and you just got to be difficult to beat at home. And Newcastle, when they play well and they get it right, there's a lovely way about the way that they play. But I think he's probably just learning that if you lose 1 or 2 players, does that mean you've got to change the way you play to get the results that you want? And that's the challenge, isn't it, really? But I like what they do. They're in games, but they're just not able to close them out.
Okay, let's head down to Ashton Gate then. Bristol hosted Saracens. Pretty dodgy conditions down there. It was like 30 minutes, I think, before we saw the first score, with a little moment of magic from Max Malins. We saw him go over the line. But despite a couple of tries for the Bears in the second half, the game ended with misery for Pat Lamb's men. The Sarries made it 8 from 8. Poor discipline, Steve, seemed to lead to Bristol's downfall, really. 18 of Saracens' 25 points coming from penalties.
Yeah, and those 20 points for Alex Good, who was last week's, obviously, record breaker. It still fascinates me that Malins scoring that try. It's a great chip and chase, wasn't it? But obviously playing against the team he's going to be playing for next season. So it's always one of those ones where you're giving them a taste of what's to come, really. But Saracens, yeah, still on fire. Could they actually go the whole season unbeaten? You never know. I mean, they're showing the strength and depth to be able to do it.
Okay, let's go on to our most outstanding player of the weekend then.
Outstanding. Supported by Fuller's London Pride.
Steve, who gets your vote?
I'm actually going to go back to Sale's win. I'm going to go with Josh Beaumont. I thought he was outstanding in that game for them. They really needed a win. He's back playing this season. He's had a really terrible, tortuous 15 months, a couple of bad knee injuries. But I think after they had a couple of defeats, I thought they really needed to get back on to winning ways, and I thought he was outstanding.
Law?
I think Gats touched on it earlier. I was very impressed with the performance of Ardi Surveyor as one player who affected a game. But I'm going to go back to Wayne Barnes. I think we need to mark the moment was outstanding. He's the best referee in the world, has been for a very long time. I think the job of refereeing has got so much harder, but he's just such a dude when he goes out there. The way he speaks to the players, the game is about respect. How you speak to the referee and how the referee speaks to you is really important, how he referees the game. And I just think he's brilliant. So 100 caps, joins Nigel Owens, will probably overtake him this week, I think. But I think he's been outstanding, not just for England, to represent England, but also for the world of rugby.
Warren, who are you going for?
For me, it has to be Ardi Savia. I thought he was just a one-man wrecking machine in terms of the way that he carried. But I thought the other player who played exceptionally was the best game he's played in a long time was Aaron Smith. You know, he's been quiet this year. He's quiet for the Highlanders in Super Rugby, been quiet for the All Blacks, and he made a couple of breaks, scored 2 tries. He looked as sharp as he has been for a long time. But Ardi Savia, I mean, he was just... a guy who can play 6, 8 and 7 as well. He caused Wales numerous headaches.
I'm just going to take it back to the Premiership, and I'm going to go Finn Smith. And I thought he was great at the weekend. He was good last week. As Steve said, he hasn't missed a kick yet. He's only 21. He's got pretty big boots to fill now, hasn't he, with Dan Biggar going. But I think Saints have got a good one there. Okay, a very quick look then at what awaits us next weekend. In terms of Premiership, it's round 10. Quick prediction on who you think will come out on top of this weekend's fixtures. Bath host Leicester. Steve, who are you going with that?
Well, Bath on a run, 2 in a row, and Leicester not played for a few weeks. Could be a leveller. I'm going to go for a Bath home win.
Lol, Newcastle, they travel to Gloucester.
Well, I think I'd say Gloucester, Exeter and Sarries will win the next 3 games. I mean, because you're playing at home, and I think those sides are very, very strong, and they want to keep the momentum going. So I think it'd be very hard pushed to say that none of those 3 sides will win at home.
Right, so I don't need to ask then. Exeter,
That's it.
Southampton, done it. Okay, fine. We move on to internationals then, shall we? England, they welcome Japan to Twickenham. Lawrence, I mean, they'll be very different prospect to Argentina.
Well, I mean, every side is a different prospect, and the reaction you'll see from England will be there. So when you play against a team that have just lost, it's as a coach, it's like the timing's not great but there's that fascinating subplot as well. Eddie Jones and John Mitchell. And I'm not going to get Warren engaged on that, but one of the reasons why England are not performing well is the message keeps changing, because the assistant staff keep churning every time. It's like a revolving door. And if it's a revolving door, then you're going to have problems. And Mitchell's now gone first to Wasps and over to Japan. You've got the former Australia coach and the former All Blacks coach working together for England. Now they're not working together, and they're back against each other. So I'm fascinated by that, because they both know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and that makes it very intriguing.
Yeah, because Warren, as a head coach, I mean, you throughout your career, you kind of liked that consistency, didn't you, of working with same people? Is that important?
Oh, I think it happens over a bit of time. It's a trust that you build up, and comfortable developing young coaches. I can remember when Robert McBride, I mean, we kept him on as forwards coach when I first came to Wales, and he'd only just finished playing for a couple of years. And I remember the first few weeks, I was going, oh my God, what have I got here? Because he was still kind of had that player mindset. He would get in the huddle and be F this, F that, F that. Like he was motivating the players. And he's turned out to be an absolutely outstanding coach over a number of years. And just for me, it was great to see that development. And yeah, you want to build up. We changed medical staff and some strength and conditioners on the way and stuff. But we're pretty consistent with our coaching team. And one of the things with me is I love being challenged. I have no problems with coaches challenging me or players challenging me, because it's all about us getting better. And if you're comfortable with that, because I'm going to challenge them, we're not always going to agree on everything, and we're going to have discussions and debates, and then you've got to come together and have a consensus, and everyone be on the same page. So yeah, definitely building that relationship and knowing that they've got your back, and we're all working together, and everyone with that same sort of philosophy over a period of time. So you get people you like, you trust, that obviously they've got to be quality, and the players have got to respect them as well, and that makes a huge amount of difference too. So I've been lucky in that respect.
Brilliant. And then we've obviously got Wales are playing Argentina, Ireland, Fiji, Italy, Australia, and France next opponent, South Africa. That's going to be a good one, and Scotland host New Zealand. Okay, Lol, should we move forward to tackle then?
Tackled. Supported by Fuller's London Pride.
Warren, I think I know the answer to some of these questions, but not all of them. Your full name, please?
Is Warren David Gatland.
It must be Sir Warren David Gatland by now, isn't it?
I'm only a CBE.
I'm only an OBE, other people's best efforts, trust me. Favourite takeaway?
I'm not really a big takeaway, but Subway.
Subway.
Yeah.
What was the last movie you watched?
Top Gun.
What, The Maverick? Or
Yeah. Watch Top Gun.
What do you have for breakfast? What does Warren Gatland have for breakfast?
Oh, tea and toast, basically. That's pretty simple.
And your nickname is either a player or as a coach, Scatty?
Yeah, Gatty in Ireland, Gat sort of in Wales and England, but yeah.
Now, you're not one for fame, but who's the most famous person in your phone book?
If I took out all the rugby people and all the sports people in my phone book, probably Ruth Jones, Rob Brydon.
Nice.
And who would play you in a film about your life, or who would you like to play you?
Oh, it'd have to be George Clooney, wouldn't it?
Aim high, Warren. Aim high.
Who's the funniest person you know, Gats?
Bobby Sturgeon. Have to be the funniest person I know.
Yeah, Paul Sturgeon is the fitness and conditioner for Wales, Wasps, Lions, everywhere Gats has gone. He's there, and that's you need people to make you laugh, and boy, can that guy make you laugh. Yeah. Are you dog or cat person in the Gatland house?
Dog. Yeah.
And I know you like a little sing-song. What's your karaoke song if Gats has to get up and sing to celebrate?
Oh, it's an old one, Durham Town. I've got to leave old Durham Town.
I don't know that one, Warren. Can you sing it?
I've got to leave old Durham.
Roger Whittaker.
Yeah. Roger Whittaker, yeah.
Yeah.
I stole it off one of my Irish friends. He used to sing it all the time.
Who is your ideal dinner party guest or guests?
I'd be interested in having dinner with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I think he'd be interesting.
Yeah, he seems funny as well. Who is the best rugby player of all time in your eyes? Who's the guy that you really admired as a player?
Oh, I think Colin Meads, was, sort of nearly 20 years in the All Blacks and coming from a province that was a small province. He was an absolute legend in the games, particularly in New Zealand. And, a lot of people, they'll know the name but wouldn't remember him. But, he was a freak in terms of fitness, a modern lock now. He's about 6'3", 6'4", but in those days, he was a colossus for the All Blacks.
And as we are a Premiership rugby podcast as well, what's been your proudest Premiership moment as a coach?
I'll tell you my proudest Premiership moment. It was a terrible performance. Well, it wasn't a terrible performance. It was when we beat Bath in the final in 2005 because we'd won the European Cup on the Sunday before, as you well know. And then so the boys partied on the Sunday and then they partied on the Monday and then they partied on the Tuesday. And we thought we've got a final to play against Bath on Saturday. So we turned up for training on the Wednesday. Couple of training sessions Thursday, Friday, and we won the game 10-6. I think that was the score. And we didn't play that well, obviously with that scoreline having celebrated. But there was a couple of things. I remember Trevor Leota, he couldn't hit a barn door with his line-out throw. We lost 11 of 13 line-outs when he was on. And great story about Alex King saying Stuart Abbott it was our line-out throw and Stuart Abbott saying to Alex King, Kingy, what's the call? And Kingy turns around and said, "Are you taking the piss? Get up and defend." So, but it was something that just clicked in the last 20 minutes. It was kind of like, actually, we haven't played that well and we got in front and just that winning mentality. And then there was no way that Bath couldn't get out of their own half in the last period of the game. And, we went on and we controlled the last quarter. And I look back and I go, after those celebrations and then you probably wouldn't have 3 days on the drink. You might only have one and get back to training on the Monday. But it was an amazing celebration in terms of winning the European Cup. But then the boys had to front up and, it was only 6 days later. So that's a challenge in itself. And then to win, a third premiership in a row was pretty special. I look back and then go, actually, that took some character and that took some real courage. And even though not a big scoreline, but boys dug deep when they needed to.
Excellent stuff. Well, Warren, thanks for being our guest this week. It's been an amazing, listen. And with any luck, we'll see you this side of the world when all those contracts get put in front of you. You've remembered to choose the right one. And you need a forwards coach. You know where I am.
And don't forget, guys, because Warren's got 3 more dates for his tour to go as well. Aberystwyth on Tuesday evening, Llandudno on the 14th of November, and then Cardiff on the 16th. So if you want to hear some more great stories from the man himself, then do check out those details online.
Well, that's all for this episode of the Evening Standards Rugby Podcast, supported by Fuller's London Pride. Don't forget, you can watch the full extended video episode of this podcast at londonpridebeer.co.uk.
And if you've enjoyed listening, then make sure you're following us so you don't miss any more future episodes. Now, one final bit of news before we finish is actually Steve's last podcast with us. For now, Anyway, Steve, we're going to miss you.
Yes, I'm going to miss you guys too. It's back to the day job for me. The Evening Standard have managed to find the budget to take on a new rugby correspondent, Nick Puriwal, and he will be joining you next week for that episode. But I am on standby. Should anything go wrong, I will be back.
Steve, it's been great working with you.
Thank you. You too.
And we'll be back next week with all the rugby news and another great guest. So until then, thanks for listening and goodbye.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio, supported by Fuller's London Pride, official beer of Premiership Rugby. Support with pride.